All right. I think we can start now. Shall we all start by chanting Namo Tassa? Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. So, can I have a show of? So, before we start, I will, to those of you who have joined just today, the way we conduct the session is we keep all the mics muted. And then when you want to ask a question, we use the hand up option or the clap emoji, which is this one. And when I would ask you a yes, whether you understand or whether you agree, then you would use this emoji to signal that it's a yes. So if you want to ask a question, and when you use the clap emoji, I will unmute your mic and then you can ask your question. Or if you do not like to speak, you can always use the chat option and write your question in the chat column, which you will find on the panel below the video, and I will answer your question. So your questions are most welcome. The more interaction that we have, the more exciting and interesting the class would be. So please do ask questions if you do have any. If you do have any. Wonderful. So I sent out an email to everyone with stating that the resources for the Sutta class as well as the Abhidhamma class has been now uploaded onto the website dhammacenter.uk. I hope that you had the time to go through the Sutta. May I have a show? Can you use the thumbs up emoji if you have read the sutta, so that I know how many of you have read it and how I should sort of go on to conduct today's class? Wonderful. Is it only Mala? Yes. Is it only 3 people? All right. So then we will go through the sutta in a way that consider the people who have not read the sutta. All right. So today's sutta is somewhat a simple sutta. It is not a complicated sutta in any way. It is a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya. It is a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya. If you do not have the sutra in front of you, you can quickly visit the Dhamma Center website, and under resources you will find the sutta. And I have just on the chat column, I have also put the link for the sutta if you want to go through the chat column. So having the sutra in front of you would of course be very much useful for you to understand and follow along to the teaching that is offered. So we will be discussing the Sambādhokasa Sutta today, right? So this sutta is not by any means a complicated sutta. It is a very simple sutta. However, although it is a very simple sutta, it is one of, I would say, one of the most commonly used practices within Theravada Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and certain sects of Mahayana Buddhism, right? So this technique or the teachings that the Buddha has offered all of us through this sutta is, although we are today studying the Theravadin version of the sutta, the teachings are very much practiced as a meditation in Tibetan, Mahayana, and Theravada Buddhism. And we practice it a lot. We use it a lot. In meditation centers, when it comes to even trainees who are training to become monks or to join the Sangha, these practices are very much used by all of those monks and trainees in order to keep the fires of Dhamma burning within them. So, first of all, the meaning of the word Sambādhokasa, right? Now, the translation which is on the handout that I have given you the link of is the discourse on the opening in the confined, right? In the opening of the confined, right? So, okasa is attributes to the word opening, and sambadha attributes to the word confined. Now, what does this really mean, right? What it means is, now sambadha, when we would take sambadha has two different meanings. One being, it has the meaning, the Pali word has the meaning of something become clustered, busy, dirty, or not dirty, but rather dusty, right? On the other spectrum, there's also some word sambhada can also mean sensuality, sexual pleasure, and also relates to the male and the female organs, right? So let us see what this play of words are all about, right? Now, from one definition of the word sambhada, right, it relates to the clutter of lay life, the clutter that we have in our life, the frantic nature, the busy nature of living a mundane life, right? On the other side, it is now as a lay person, whilst living as a lay person, the sort of the mentality and the need to procreate, right? To be with the sensual pleasures and to feed upon the pleasures as a lay person, as a person living in the mundane world. So both of these contexts apply to the sutta that we are going to study today, right? What this is sort of pointing us towards is the fact that when we live in this world, right, although we might be spiritual, we might be spiritually inclined, we might be meditators, right? But time to time, we fail miserably in certain ways that we develop, or rather we are nudged by the pleasures of the world or the stressors of the world, right? So this applies to, of course, the greed parts and, of course, the other akusalas also that can sort of pull us in, binding us into the cycle of rebirth and death, binding us into the cycle of rebirth and death, right? Now, the practices that are offered within this sutta, right? If you have just gone through the sutta, it talks about the 6 recollections, the anusati, right? The 6 recollections. Now, these 6 recollections, as I mentioned earlier, are widely used in the meditative community, right? I would say that actually, that's a mistake. It is widely used in the meditative and the non-meditative community as well as a spectrum of Buddhism Everyone uses it. Even the offerings that we do to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha falls under this practice that the Buddha has spoken of here. The reminiscing of the effort that it takes for one to develop and cultivate the attributes of morality within oneself also falls within these teachings which are mentioned in this sutta, right? The any sort of sacrifice that we would do as people, any sort of offering that we would do apart from the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha too applies or is mentioned or falls within the context of whatever which is, or the meditative, the cha anusati, which is mentioned within the sutta, right? It also has a connection to the sutta that we did on Monday. Because on Monday, the sutta that we did, the Ambalattaka Rahulhovada Sutra, also was talking about reflection, isn't it? Right? But there we were talking more about Paccavekkhana. If you remember, we were talking about Paccavekkhana, right? Today we are talking about Anusati, right? More or less, the Paccavekkhana and the Anusati are both in terms a sort of reflection that we would, and recollection that we would do, right? A reflection and recollection of the Buddha's qualities, the Dhamma's qualities, the Sangha's qualities, the qualities of Sila. These are the 6 that we are going to go through today, right? Now, before we go on to the Cha Anusati, I would like to speak a little bit more about the word Sambādha, right? Now, in the word Sambādha, we spoke about there being 2 sort of a play of words, a play of meanings between to sort of define the word Sambādha. And in this play of meaning, right, we spoke about the dusty, the clutter, the stifling nature of being a lay person, of being a person living within the mundane karma vachara bhumi, right? And on the other, the need, the sort of the attraction of procreation, right? And the attraction of being a normal lay person entails procreating as well, right? I think many of the Sri Lankans who are with us today would understand as being a lay person, when you come to a certain age with the Asian culture, sometimes you are sort of pushed into marriage, or sort of your parents would sort of not like to see you being single. Now, this is very much a part of what the Buddha is talking about in this sutta, right? When you are a lay person, when you are living within the mode of the world, right, within the framework of the world, however much you do not or want to progress upon a certain path of Dhamma leading towards enlightenment and liberation, there is always going to be a very strong pull where you are sort of pulled into what the mundane society and all of the inflections in the mundane society are all about, right? So how do we keep ourselves from being pulled into the whirlpool, right? Into the whirlpool of what mundane sort of the thinking patterns, the kilesas, all of this pulled into this the functioning of these kilesas, etc., within us. How do we keep away from it? That is why, it is to that regard that the Buddha is now recommending and speaking of these, using these recollections to protect, shield oneself, right? Now, do not misunderstand. Do not misunderstand. I am not in any way saying that One would, because now we have spoken about marriage and the feeling of being pulled into it. Now, I am not in any way saying that if you are married, that you should leave your marriage to, right, walk the path. Please do not do that, right? Now, what we are talking about are the kilesas which arises from such associations, and it is actually just the kilesas that is our focus, right? It is just the kilesas that we are, that is the focus. Now, it is not just marriage, but if you're a lay person, you have to earn. If you have to, and in earning you have to be within a competitive society to do your jobs, where whatever field you might be in, it is always, when it comes to the mundane world, it is always competitive, right? Even now, sometimes now, even being in a temple sometimes is competitive. Right? So what to talk about the life that lay people lead, right? So it is very important to understand, it is very important to understand that these problems, that whatever these problems that we face, it is very important that we have an ongoing practice that will allow the heart, the mind to bloom within the Dhamma, to give one the strength to deal with the sort of the pull of the kilesas, the hindrances, right? I'm using the word kilesa. I'm sorry to those of you who do not understand the word. Kilesa means hindrances. What are the hindrances? There are 5 hindrances: kama, chanda, vyapada, thina midda, uddhacha kukkucha, vichikicha. Kama chanda is sensual pleasure. Kama chanda vyapada is hatred, right? Kama chanda vyapada. Thina midda is sloth and torpor. Uddhacha kukkucha is the restlessness, and and uh, and um, and vichikicha is skeptical doubt, right? Now, is skeptical doubt. Now, when it comes to the hindrances, now we are just in the definition of the sutta, all right? We are just in the definition of the sutta, right? Thank you, Dil. Yes, the hindrances are called the nivaranas. Now, when it comes to again the phrase sambhada, right? We see that there is a nivarana sambhada, which is what we have spoken of, the 5 hindrances, the pull towards the 5 hindrances, and also, whilst the nivaranas are in one side, there could also be, forget the nivaranas, just the pull towards the sensual chords itself, right? Just the pull towards the sensual chords itself. So Sambādhi is now referring to both of these separate parts, the pull. Now, what I am reminded of when with the word sambādha and the meaning, with the word sambādha and the 2 definitions that the word sambādha comes with, is the word papancha, right? Now, papanchas, to those of you who do not know what papancha is, papancha is tanha, ditti, mana, right? Tanha is greed. Ditti is wrong view. And mana is conceit, right? Now, what the prapanchas do, or what it sort of enacts, why it is something that is why is it a phenomena that makes it something that the Buddha speaks of as something that we should get rid of, is because it is the papanchas that consistently keep on pulling us back into step number one. You try to progress, you're really putting in all the effort possible into progressing in the path. However, because we live in a mundane world and because we have 5 sensory doors, what are the 5 sensory doors? Chakku, Sota, Grahana, Jibha, Kaya, right? To those of you, again, I'm going to keep on using, I know that some people don't like the sort of, because they don't understand the Pali parts, but get used to it, right? Get used to the Pali. Chakku, the eyes, Sota is the ears, Gana is the nose, right? Jivha, the tongue, and the Kaya is the feeling aggregate all around the body, right? Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jivha, Kaya. Now, these are the 5 sensory doors, right? But there is also, we are not talking about the Manodwara here, right? Or the mind door. The mind door is usually spoken of in Abhidhamma, right? Because it goes to greater detail to separate the object, the places that receives the object and the place that cognizes the object, if you understand what I mean, right? Now, consciousness arises in 6 places, right? In 6 places. At the eye door, ear door, tongue door, nose door, and the body wherever the sensation is felt, and the mind, right? According to Abhidhamma, where is the mind? According to Abhidhamma, it is said that the mind arises within a deep compartment of the heart, associating a very thick, dark blood, right? That is what is mentioned within the Abhidhamma, right? I think for many years, I think not many, yes, for many years we believed, or scientists were speaking of, scientists were speaking of the mind as a seat, the brain as a seat of mind. But now scientists too believe that there are parts of the body which emanate stronger electromagnetic waves than the brain. Right now, the heart apparently has a 60 times, the electromagnetic waves produced by the heart is apparently 60 times stronger than that of the brain, right? And they also do speak about the gut, right? The gut, I like to always connect it to the core chakra, right? I like to connect it to the core chakra because there are certain meditations which are taught in associating with the core chakra, and even practices like, for example, Kung Fu, Qigong, right? These are practices which uses the power of the core chakra, right? Now, there are certain, now we will not go into that, right? We will not go into that. I'm going to stop myself. Now, prapancha, right? So prapancha, tanha, ditti, mana, tanha, greed, ditti, view, mana, conceit. This is what pulls us back into, sort of keeps us stuck in samsara. Every time you might recollect that every time that you went on a retreat, every time that you were trying to do something good, every time that you were you were attempting to do something supramundane, right? If there was a disturbance, a barrier to you completing the action with a pure heart, it is one of this: tanha, ditti, or mana. Tanha, ditti, or mana, right? These 3 act as a sort of it breaks the power of the kusala, or the energy of the kusala that arises in the mind, the function of a kusala, while we are performing a kusala action, the karma created by the kusala, the energy created by the kusala acts in such a way that it lifts us, makes us confident, pushes us up, right? Now it is as if, now if I am to ask all of you, tell me one good thing that you have done, all of you all will be jumping up and unmuting your mics to tell me something, tell all of us something. If I ask you to tell me, all of us, something bad that you have done, Dil has already unmuted her mic. I'm going to mute you again. Now, right? Why is that? Because a akusala is such that an akusala pulls the mind down, weakens the aggregates attributes, weakens the mind, weakens the personality, weakens everything actually that strengthens your mind, right? That strengthens your mind. So, for example, now you do something bad and you are guilty, you feel guilty about the action that you've done. The Buddha has never spoken about guilt, right? The Buddha has never spoken about guilt. The Buddha has spoken about understanding, proper understanding, yoniso mansikara, right? Proper understanding, yoniso mansikara, right understanding. What is this right understanding? The attitude by which you perceive your mistake is very important. Because the karmas that we create multiply with guilt, right? Whilst with understanding, what happens is the akusala is subdued, the sati chaitasikas and the kusala arises with that. Now you have motivation and strength to do better. That is what we are looking at in this sutta. Now, in this sutta. Now, if we go to the sutta, we are now coming to the sutta, from the definition to the sutta, right? So just to wrap up on the definition, we've discussed sambādha, right? Okasa then means to clear the way, right? To clear the way and to clear the path that we have to tread on towards mental clarity and the getting rid specifically of tanha, right? Specifically regarding tanha, because this sutta specifically relates or uses the word greed because of the word sambādha. So you might, when you go through the sutta, you might wonder, why is it only talking about the five, what about vyapada, what about all of that, right? Now remember, this sutta is talking about the pull, right? Anger does not pull us, anger pushes us, right? Ditti and dosa working together pushes us, right? Whilst tanha and ditti working together, or greed and delusion working together, attracts us. Now it is because of this sansara, the attraction that we have towards sansara, that we fight to be in sansara and do the things that we want to do and achieve within the mundane plane, right? This is a pull that the Buddha is talking about here, not specifically the vyapada. Do we understand? Can I have a thumbs up if we understand? You can even thumbs up with your hand like this, right? Right? Okay. All right. Wonderful. So, do we all understand? Any questions?
No. Yes, Bhante.
Oh, yes. Go on.
Yeah. When you say papancha,
yeah,
and the Bodhi Bhikkhu's translation is proliferation.
Proliferation.
Yeah, but proliferation. Yeah, and do you read me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. Now, the underlying force behind that proliferation is the tanha, ditti, and what's the other one you said?
Mana.
Tanha, Ditti, Mana.
Mana. So underlying force behind that attraction is, or the proliferation is, the three dharmas. So actually, the way I understood is papancha is the word proliferation. It's actually pulling in. Is it correct?
Yes. So we do not, in defining papancha vira, we do not sort of say, okay, papancha and under papancha, it's papancha itself is tanha ditti mana.
Okay,
Right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
quality, function, manifestation, right, is
Yeah.
tanha ditti mana. So we do not really
Okay.
speak about it separately. We speak
Yeah,
about,
all right, yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant actually. Underline means invisibly it's associated with.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? All right. Now, moving on to the sutta. Now, in the sutta, right, the sutta takes us through a sort of a declaration of sorts, right? A declaration of sorts by Venerable Mahakachayana, right? Kachana, right? Now, for those of you who do not know Venerable Mahakachayana was one of the chief disciples of the Buddha, right? He was one of the most handsome monks within the retinue of the Buddha. Venerable Mahakachayana was also one of the monks who were very much skilled in the exposition of Dhamma, right? Exposition of Dhamma. And it is said that when Mahakachayana sort of walks through a town or a village, people stop what they are doing to just gaze at his beauty. He was such a beautiful, handsome monk, it is said. There is also a story about Mahakachayana where a wealthy merchant undergoes a sex change, a spontaneous sex change, because he wishes that Mahakachayana, who was an arahant, an enlightened being, would become his partner, wife, right? So whilst Mahakachayana was bathing in the river, it is said that the sun, the sun was shining on the skin of Mahakachayana in such a way that the skin appeared as if it had a layer of gold, a layer of gold on it. And the merchant was mesmerized by this color, by the beauty of Mahakachayana, that he wishes that Mahakachayana becomes his wife. And in just thinking this, the karma was so strong because it is said that the karma was so strong because Venerable Mahakachayana was an arahant. The merchant becomes, the male merchant becomes a woman, right? Unable to comprehend what is it that happened to him, he flees the village that he is a part of, that he is a very well-known member of, and goes to a far distant village and lives a life as a woman, gets married, has children as well, and one day meets a friend, and then the friend, and he tells the friend of who he is and what happened to him. Then the friend advises him to go to Venerable Mahakachayana and ask for forgiveness. When he does so, Venerable Mahakachayana, upon forgiving him, undergoes another spontaneous sex change, where then he returns to his original gender. He then becomes a monk. Now he, as a male, as a man, before he underwent the first sex change, he had children. As a woman, he had children as well. And then he got ordained. He got ordained as a monk, and he became, shortly afterwards, he became an arahant. And after becoming an arahant, the bhikkhus asked this monk, now you have had children as a woman and as a man, right? You are both a mother and a father, right? As which a mother or father did you have more attraction, or rather more love, actually not attraction, but rather love towards your kids? And the monk says, I had more sort of compassion and love and empathy towards my kids as a woman compared to when I was a man, right? So just point of information, some extra bit of information for you to know, right? So hurrah, all the ladies here. Right. So now we are going on to the recollections, right? Now the first recollection that we go on to is, we know, Buddhanusati, right? Now Buddhanusati is a practice. Buddhanusati is a practice that many of us have done, right? There are a couple of very, very interesting benefits that comes out of the practice of Buddhanusati and the rest of the anusatis, but specifically Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, and Sanghanusati, right? The results of these three types of meditations are somewhat profound compared to the rest. Now, usually, now I said, as we started, I mentioned that as young monks or as trainees who are training to become monks, these recollections would be practiced most often by these trainees, by these monks, to awaken a sense of Dhamma in their hearts, right? The consistent re-impulsions that we create through the reminiscing recollection of the qualities of the Buddha does a lot to change the way that we act and behave. It is rather profound. I would attribute that to the energy of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, right? And what the teachings that they have left us with, and the respect that we have for the three classes, the triple gem, right? Whenever there are many instances, even during the time of the Buddha, where when certain monks, unhappy with the spiritual life that they are living, something that they would usually do is, when they are unhappy, they would always come to the Buddha, right? They would always come back to the Buddha. The Buddha, in those instances, would teach them a part of Dhamma suitable to them, but it is not only the Dhamma, it is the Buddha himself being a part of the Sangha headed by the Buddha, being a student of the Buddha itself motivates these monks who live far away to remain back and continue their practice. The Buddha's existence in our life has a profound impact that I cannot put into words. The Buddha's impact is such that now we, however crass we might be internally, right? Crass we might be internally, we might have, sides to us, predominant natures within us that makes us people who are not that good, speaking quite frankly, right? But when we recollect these qualities of the Buddha, right, also accepting the fact that there are no beings who are not enlightened, who are completely pure, right? There are the attributes of the Buddha being purity, enlightenment, a value, a quality of lightness. The mind finds these attributes quite enlightening, calming, peaceful, serene to be with, right? Now, for example, if we would take television marketing, right? Now, in television marketing, if the program is quite, if we would say it is quite a drama, if it is a dramatic soap, for example, with a lot of arguments, family drama, with those sorts of emotions being displayed within the time of its if it sort of telecasting. The moment that a commercial starts playing, and when this commercial is a happy commercial, there are children, there are beautiful people smiling, dancing, promoting a product, right? The mind immediately attracts itself to the product that is being advertised. Why? Because now the more dramatic the scene which was displayed in the original drama which you were watching, the more attracted you will be to the happy product that you will be sold through the commercial, right? Likewise, when we live in this stressful, frantic, hectic, nerving world, right? Having a dewdrop of serenity, peace, tranquility is something that people like, yearn, and relate to the experience of, right? So this Buddhanusati, right, Dhammanusati and Sanghanusati has an attribute, a very powerful attribute of a powerful sense of serenity and peace. Now, how is Buddhanusati? Now, in practicing Buddhanusati, we go from, we know the normal traditional way of practicing Buddhanusati is, we know the Gatha, right? We know the Gatha, which speaks about the qualities of the Buddha is Itibiso Bhagava Arhang Samma Sambuddho Vijacharna Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhammasarati Sattha Deva Manusanam Buddho Bhagavati, right? Now this verse elaborating on the qualities of the Buddha, the qualities of the Buddha's enlightenment, the profound status of the Buddha within the spiritual realm, right? It requires a bit of learning, academic learning, to practice a bit of Buddhanusati, right? Quite frankly, you need to know the meaning of what Itipiso Bhagava Arhan Samma Sambuddho is. Now, the meaning of the word is sometimes not enough. Because, yes, for example, if we would take Samma Sambuddho, right, the enlightened one, right? Now, the enlightened one. Now, how do we give it a sense of depth? That depth is given by the stories that we read within the suttas, the jatakas, the sacrifices made by the Buddha to attain enlightenment, the teachings of the Buddha. Now that is what gives true depth to the meaning of the word, right? To the meaning of the word. It is said now, it is the view of Venerable Buddhaghosa, the author of the Vishuddhimagga, author of the Vishuddhimagga, the path of purification, that the Anusatis, specifically Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, and Devahanusati, can only be properly practiced in a way leading to enlightenment by a stream enterer, right? Why it is said so, Venerable Buddhaghosa goes on to explain in the Vishuddhimagga, also to quote that the 7th chapter of the Vishuddhimagga is wholly devoted to and expounding upon the 6 reflections, the Anusati. The whole chapter is on the Anusati. There is great detail given to the Anusatis in the path of purification. Now, in the path of purification, why Buddhaghosa, Venerable Buddhaghosa says that this practice is something which can be done in an effective way leading to enlightenment is because it is a Sotapanna or a stream enterer who can truly comprehend and understand the depth of the Buddha's wisdom and qualities, the depth of the Dhamma and the wisdom that it offers, and the depth of the qualities of the Sangha, right? Because of this reason, Venerable Buddhaghosa says, this practice can be effectively practiced only by people who are enlightened stream enterers. But that is just an opinion. Within the Tipitaka, it does not, within the Pali canon, nowhere does it say that it is a practice for the enlightened ones. It is very much stated within the practices of all beings, mundane and supramundane, Seka and Aseka Puggalas, enlightened and unenlightened beings. Do we understand? Before we continue, can I have a show of thumbs ups, thumb ups, to sort of tell me if we are all in one page? Wonderful. Good. All right. Now when it comes to the practice of Buddhanusati, we would go iti viso bhagava samma sambuddha. Go on up until the end, come back to the top, repeat to the ground again, repeat to the bottom again. Now this practice, now we are taught different approaches. This is very much a practice, right? Where you recite with the meaning in mind, you recite the stanzas of the qualities of the Buddha. Another technique that has been taught to us is where, now for example, the first quality is Tibiso, the second quality is Bhagava. So the third quality is Arahant, the fourth quality is Samma Sambuddha. So how do you do it then? This technique, please pay attention, this technique is where I will give you an example. Itibiso Bhagava, Bhagava Itibiso, Bhagava Arahang, Arahang Itibi, Arahang Bhagava, Arahang Samma Sambuddho, Samma Sambuddho, Arahang, Samma Sambuddho, Vijjācana Sampanno, Vijjācana Sampanno, Samma Sambuddho. You repeat or you recollect, right? Going from the first to the second, second to the first again, and the second to the third. Right? Now, this is a way of keeping the attention in the recollection. Because as we know, sometimes when we recite mantras, sometimes when we chant, do chantings, we are chanting. We are so used to chanting, but the mind is somewhere else. The mind is somewhere else, right? In order to avoid this, what we do is we switch the first and the second to the first again, and then the second to the third to the second again, and the third to the fourth to the third again, and the fourth to the fifth to the. Do you understand what I mean? Can I have a thumbs up if you understand what I mean? Good. All right. The other technique is where you Itibiso Bhagava Aran Samma Sambuddho Vijjachana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purusha Dhammasarati Satta Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagava Buddho Satta Deva Manusana Purusha Dhammasarati Anuttaro Lokavidu Sugato Vijjachana Sampanno Samma Sambuddho Aram Bhagava Itibiso Bhagava Aran Samma Sambuddho. You go from the top to the bottom and come from the bottom to the top again. Right? From the bottom to the top again. What this will also do, it helps in the acquiring of a higher state of samadhi, right? From the repetitive adverting to the quality of the Buddha, one, you're keeping your mind from being distracted, right? Two, you're adverting to a wholesome object again and again and again and again. Because the object is an element of wholesome, the wholesome nature again arising from a base of meditation. This is a meditation that we are doing. This helps in powering or sort of nurturing the practice of samadhi. Do we understand? Can I have a thumbs up? Do you have any questions? Does anyone have a question? All right, no questions. Good. Now that is the same with the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, right? It is the same, right? You go, it is the same pattern. You can go, you can recite it normally, right? You switch it up, you go down, you come up again. And this is to keep your attention very much in the present moment as you chant, as you go on. Another way that you can strengthen the practice is through visualization, right? Visualizing. Now, when we have read the Dhamma, when we have the data concerning the Buddha and what he has done, the respect that we have towards the Buddha is a very powerful figure, right? The Buddha, being that powerful figure, reminiscing the Buddha, imagining the Buddha in your mind before starting your recollection, and then imagining the Buddha sort of coming to life with the recollection, is a way that you can deepen your practice. Together with the recollection of Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati. Recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Right? So this imagination, this visualization process can help you develop a deeper sense of Shraddha towards the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Now, the Shraddha, now as a result of these practices, right, we are going to develop something called the Arya Buddhi, right? Now these fivefold growths that happens, right? with the development of the different anusatis, right, is then turns into a phenomena that converts the way that we think and behave. Our cognitive processes itself now changes. The things that we yearn for changes. We become more acquainted with wholesome and needing wholesomeness in our minds. Now, let us go down to Silanusati, right? The recollection of virtue, right? The recollection of virtue. In the recollection of virtue, what we go through is a recollection of the Panchasila or Ajiva Attamaka Sila or the Atta Sila or Dasa Sila or Upasampada Sila or whatever morality, level of morality that we have determined to protect and develop. We recollect the purity and the pristine nature of this morality. Now, whilst Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, Devanusati, that is the recollection of deities, can be done through just recollection and understanding, right? You need knowledge. That's what, as I told you, you need to read, you need to have a bit of knowledge, data concerning those four practices. But with regards to Silanusati and Chaganusati, that is the recollection of morality and the recollection of giving, right? Recollection of charity, your generosity, right? These two needs to be practiced. We need to be able to practice or have a practice to be able to do the reflection upon charity and sila. The sila attributes, now as we attempt to protect the 5 precepts and abide by the 5 precepts, it is no surprise to anyone that we do sometimes fail. We do sometimes transgress, and we do fail, and we have to now retake or redetermine the 5 precepts, right? That is no problem. The problem is if we dwell in the mistake that we've made. Now, with the attraction that we have to the Dhamma, to meditation, with the passion that we have towards Dhamma and meditation, something that happens too often is when we make mistakes, we dwell on these mistakes and we start identifying with these mistakes that we've made. Now you start believing that it is difficult for you to not lie, that it is difficult for you to not steal, that it is difficult for you to not do certain things. You identify your personality, your character with some of these mistakes, right? Now that is a grave mistake that many make. What the Buddha's advice remains to be is when one makes a mistake, transgresses a rule, falls into a pit of akusala, with understanding of panya, with the eye of Dhamma, one reflects on the mistake that one has made, distances oneself, one's identity from that mistake, and determines to do better. That is what the Buddha has taught, right? That is what the Buddha has taught. So in Silanusati, if and when one is able to, for example, now because we have a Sri Lankan audience, I will use a Sri Lankan example. when we go to an auspicious Buddhist spiritual event, all events start with the Panchasila. Now, I am personally in very much disagreement with this because of one reason. I disagree, but sometimes, I also do see that it is worth it. But in a way, what we are doing is we are bringing down the value of uptaking the 5 precepts, right? Now, something beautiful that I saw in my master's monastery in Vienna, in Austria, is every fortnight, every 2 weeks, Wednesday. So every fortnight, every Wednesday fortnight is the Panchasila day or the Sila day, right? So all of these Austrians dressed in white, if they have broken their precepts, they come, they write their name in a book, and they come and take the precepts, have a cup of tea, and goes back. And they have a lot of respect towards the process of receiving the precepts, right? Receiving the precepts. I feel as if because of this cultural implication, because of the cultural practice of taking the precepts too often, we have started to not value the process of taking a precept, right? Now, as a Samanera, I remember, now when we would, now as Samaneras, young monks, we would receive the precepts, right? Not the 5 precepts, but the 10 precepts, the Samanera Sila, Samanera Sila, every full moon day, right? Every full moon day. So the taking of the precepts is also a little bit tiring because you have to, there is a way to sit on the ground. Your back is not, your bottom is not resting on the ground. In Sinhala, we call it ukkuta, right? It is somewhat a form of kneeling, right? And you have to go through this slow process of taking the precepts, right? So we respect the precepts. So if before the full moon day, if there is a transgression, if there's a transgression, we have to go to our preceptor again and take the precepts again, which is a hassle, right? Which is a hassle. Why? Usually in the monastery, the preceptor or these monks, they live in distant kutis or distant monk lodgings. So sometimes we have to walk very far and then get an appointment from the monk and then go back. So we had a lot of respect towards the precepts when we took it, right? That is very important in my mind, because as I have told many of you, like for example, a love relationship or any other relationship, it is not love that keeps a relationship together. It is respect that keeps a relationship together, right? If you think love is the only thing that keeps relationship together, no, respect is far beyond important than love in any relationship. Similarly, respecting the practice, the morality, the morals that we have determined to undertake gives a true depth to the quality of the determinations that we make. Quality of the determinations that we make, right? Now, in Silanusati, the recollection happens such that in such a way that we comprehend, we recollect the purity of our virtues, how untarnished, unbroken, unhinged the Sila is in our life, right? To this, of course, you have to work hard, right? The Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, and the Sanghanusati helps in regard to protecting and abiding by the precepts, the morality, right? and the proper execution of generosity. The proper execution of generosity. The more that we practice these recollections, the more that we practice these recollections, the more we are able to develop faith towards the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, right? This faith is very important. Now, I have heard many times, right, this word concerning blind faith, right? I think most of us agree. The Pali word for blind faith is bhakti, and the word bhakti is not found within the expositions of the Buddha. It is more a word that is found in other faith, Indian faith traditions. However, there is a time in all of our lives that we require, or we have to have a sense of hope and faith, although we might not properly understand where it leads to. For an example, we've gone to universities, we know the direction that we want to go in, but we do not know whether we will actually achieve what we want to achieve. We do not know whether we will be able to get a job by the time we finish university. So what do we have there? You have a bit of blind faith. You trust the system in a way that you allow time to take its course, right? In practices such as Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, Metta, the foul meditations, these meditations, although some might seem somewhat absurd, especially something of the practice as a practice such as the foulness meditations. However, it is very important that we persevere and we continue the practice, because it is in continuation that we find the results and fruits of it, right? The Shraddha, the ending of the sutta, with regards to the development of the Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, Silanusati, Chaganusati, and the Devanusati, it is mentioned in the sutta that as a result of these Anusatis, recollections, the phenomena that arises within us is Shraddha, faith, right? This faith, the faith Chaitasika, is always accompanied by wisdom, right? By wisdom. The wisdom attribute and faith, the sati attribute, the mindfulness attribute, Shraddha is accompanied by wisdom, right? And Shraddha, when accompanied by wisdom, that is the only way that this faith, according to the Buddha's practice, can arise. This faith has a very powerful quality within it to subdue the nivarnas, or the hindrances that arise in the mind. The busy nature, the frantic, busy nature of the mind is subdued by the continuous practice and by the specific Chaitasika of Shraddha. The more we practice, the Shraddha becomes more and more powerful. When Shraddha becomes more and more powerful as a mental factor, what happens is the the effects of prapancha in our life is sort of brushed aside. The prapanchas are weakened. The effect the nivaranas have upon one's life is weakened. Why? Because in your mind you are deliberately recollecting, reminiscing the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha all the time. A story that I remember now, when I mentioned the continuous recollection, is the story of Venerable Maho Sumedha, right? Venerable Maho Sumedha was a Sri Lankan Buddhist monk. He has passed away. It has been many, many years. I think he passed away in 94 or 92. Maho Sumedha was a monk who did many generous sort of acts of puja, different pujas that had never been done before in Sri Lanka, right? One of the offerings that he did was the the uh, the platform on at the Ruan Valley Mahasaya, the Maha Cheti. To those of you who do not know what the Maha Cheti is or the Ruan Valley Saya is, it is the most, it is the most revered pagoda, holding the largest sort of collection, or the biggest, the largest collection of Buddha's relics. It is in the city of Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka. So one of the offerings that Maho Sumedha did was there is a type of offering called Ashat Dusha Mahadana, right? Ashat Dusha Mahadana, I do not know what the English word is. If someone knows, please put it on the chat. Asadusha Madhana, but I will explain to you what it is. Asadusha Madhana is an offering of everything required by a monastery, by the Sangha actually, right? So from needles to robes, to beds, to mattresses, to bed sheets, um, to bricks, to cement, to sand. He piled heaps, mountains of these different necessities on the whole platform of Ruan Valley Sai. And now, to those of you who have been to the Ruan Valley Sai know how big that area is. And filling up that whole platform, the Malua, is such a extraordinary offering, right? So Maho Sumedha did this sort of offering. He was a monk who had a lot of faith and shraddha towards the Buddha. So much so that in his temple, in his monastery, he had a separate living quarters designated for the Buddha, right? So he had a different quarters made for the Buddha, and he would go into the quarters every morning, every lunchtime, every afternoon and evening, 4 times a day. And in the morning he would offer, he was a Pali scholar as well, right? He was a scholar. There are very nice deshanas of Maho Sumedha on YouTube as well, if you would like to listen to them. And he would make Pali stanzas to offer the toothbrush and the dahati in the morning, and he would offer that, right? So imagining that the Buddha was living within these quarters, he was doing all of these, conducting all of these offerings. And as a result, he explains that at one point he started to visualize in a realistic way that the Buddha, now when he was pouring the water from the jug onto the padikama, reciting a gatha for the Buddha to wash the hands to have his meal, he explains, imagine, or rather seeing the Buddha's hand actually making use of the water, right? Of course, this is, do not misunderstand, this is sort of a visualization of, as a result of Shraddha, right? Now, this Shraddha, this level of Shraddha is very powerful, and it is so powerful that even in times of stress, anxiety, in times of grief, this amount of Shraddha, these recollections can lighten the mind to a level where you now are able to find solace and peace. Solace and peace, right? It is very important to note that this practice, now, if you are a busy person, although you are busy, if you get into the mood, right, of every time that you have some time, you recollect, you keep on recollecting these qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, right, then that is something that will profoundly impact the life that you have, the relationships that you have. If you are short tempered, or if you are a person who gets quite emotional in ways that um, makes it difficult for people around you, these practices sort of bring a sense of subduing control and mastery over the mind and the body, right? The first thing we spoke about as a result of these practices, what arises is Shraddha. The second is the Sila. You develop a need. You develop a need, or rather, you develop not a need actually. The word would be, what would the word be? You develop a stable position within Sila, right? Sometimes, for example, let us take a vegetarian. Sometimes a vegetarian could be enticed by a dish of meat, as an example. I'm not saying that all vegetarians are like that, but sometimes, temptations come. You can be tempted, right? Now that temptation, right, reduces when it comes to you determining whether you thinking, or the internal dialogue trying to comprehend whether should I do it or should I not? Should I transgress or should I not? Should I lie or should I not? Right? Now that is where you have a bit of instability in Sila, right? You're comprehending, it's a white lie, so maybe it's okay, right? No, right? This morality is about you being comfortable with the morals that has been designated and taught by the Buddha, right? The morals, you now find a stable position within the morals. The third is the learning, right? Sutta, right? The Sutta, the data that we sort of accumulate, and the understanding and depth that we give that data is the third that arises, right? The fourth is Chaga. Now, Chaga, just as in Chaganusati, Chaga speaks about the ability of one to let go, to be generous, to be able to put another person before oneself, right? Now, in the one thing that I forgot to mention is in Devanusati and the recollection of the qualities of the deities and the recollection of charity, the good qualities of charity, there is in this practice a sort of comparison, right? But this comparison is, please understand, this is very important that you understand this. It is not, my Sila is better than this other person's Sila. It's not something like that, right? The piety, if I am egoistically saying, with conceit, I'm saying, I have better sila than so and so, right? Now, my piety, my devotion is not towards a practice, it's toward myself. Do you understand? It's towards myself. That is what makes that comparison absolutely wrong, right? Absolutely wrong. The comparison here, or rather the recollection how it happens in Chaga and Devanusati and Chaganusati, is the piety and the devotion, the Shraddha, is not towards myself, but towards Nirvana. Do you understand? Right? Then it's different. Now, because now when you say, I am so great, I am so happy that I have a good sila, you're not talking about yourself, you're not trying to pump up your ego, you're trying to get closer to nirvana, because that is the important attribute to mark. Are you devoted to yourself, your ego, or are you devoted towards the attainment of nirvana? Right? So the recollection should be based on your devotion to the attraction that you have to nirvana. Do we understand? Can I have a thumbs up if you understood? If you have a question, this is the time to ask. Okay. 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 Right. Right. Chaga. Right. And then the last is now panya. Right. Panya being wisdom. The wisdom is, we know in the Arya Ashtangika Magga, the Eightfold Noble Truths. It starts off with, with the Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa. Right view, right thought. Right view and right thought are two attributes of Panya, wisdom, right? And then comes sila, right? Samma vacha, kammanta, ajiva, vayama comes under sila, and then samma sati, samma samadhi comes under samadhi. We know, or you should know, that again it comes after. We do not speak about it after, because we are speaking the Eightfold Noble Path refers to the path, not the result of the path. So we do not speak of Samma Jnana, Samma Vimuttya, which is the 9th and the 10th factors. Samma Jnana and Samma Vimuttya is that Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, that in terms the Panya, which has now been developed, nourished, cultivated through the Eightfold practice, the result is Samma Jnana, Samma Vimuttya. It is through Samma Jnana, Samma Vimuttya. Samma Jnana is right knowledge, Samma Vimuttya, right liberation. These two comes out of, is an attribute of Panya. We attain Nibbana through Panya, wisdom, right? So the meditation that we do, the mindfulness vipassana, the experiences that we undergo, the experiences that we undergo are all to do with the inspiring or the promotion of wisdom, right? Of wisdom. That is what helps us to kilesa cheda, to cut off the roots of the nivaranas that have sort of been rooted into our life for so many births, right? So many births. Now, in this practice, now that is a sutta, right? That is a sutta. We now, the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, the moral, the virtues, the charity, and the qualities of the deities, Now, this practice, these practices, for one to commit to these practices. Now, something that a lady in the Buddhism for Beginners class asked in the morning is, Bhante, there are a lot of ants in my kitchen these days because of the spring, the summer, there are a lot of ants. Right now, I want to be a good Buddhist as well, but I also want to have a spick and span kitchen. How sweet of her. Bless her. Right? She wants to be a good Buddhist. She also wants to have a spick and span kitchen. Right? So she was like, what am I supposed to do? Right? Similarly, I would say it is the answer to that relates very much to, Bhante, I don't have time. Or, it is very difficult to remind yourself what is important in your life. Right? That will tell you what you should be doing and the of level of virya that you should be putting into the Dhamma. Right? If the Dhamma is, because in the grand scheme of things, the little things that we go through within our 60, 80, 100 years of life, the time that we spend, even the 100 years compared to the many eons that this world has existed, is a very, very, very trivial part. You can't even trivial, it is a microscopic part within the grand scheme of the universe. This birth and the achievements of this birth too are similarly so small compared to the big picture in terms of the samsara that we live in. It is important to understand what is it that we want in our lives. Is it the liberation as the Buddha has taught us? Is it this mental liberation through the attainment of the nirvana, or is it something else? If it is something else, without you knowing what it is, now some might say, Bhante, in that case, isn't it better if we, do it anyways, because you're doing something good, even if you don't want nirvana, you're doing. No, the Buddha does not in any way speak highly of a blind practice. He speaks about present moment awareness. He speaks of present moment awareness, understanding, and prajna. For those to operate in one's life, one needs to understand oneself. When one understands what your needs are, what your true needs are, then you can even change what your needs are with the right sort of tools and techniques. Right? If you feel that you are a person who is attracted more to materialistic things, right, through contemplation, through understanding, through Dhamma training, you can now sort of come into a healthier space of mind, because we know that being materialistic in the 21st century is so damaging. Right? It's damaging so many of our population. Right? Knowing the problem allows us to handle the problem better. Right? So awareness, these recollections of paramount importance, you will see that once you start practicing these recollections, right? Recollections, what will happen is the way that you behave and think, the thinking patterns, what you do, what you like and dislike will dramatically change. Also, one thing to note is practicing the anusatis are very easy with chanting beads, a rosary, or a goal counter, one of those small machinery equipment that referees or goalkeepers in sports use to keep count of the goals. If you want to start practicing the anusatis, order one from Amazon. and use it to keep count. Keep count. And when you get used to it, you can do it very, very fast. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can do it very fast, and you can follow the meaning fast as well, because the mind gets better at it, right? So it might be good with your meditation. Now some of you have texted me in the morning today saying, Bhante, I meditated today and thank you very much and all of that. I'm very happy to hear that the Dhamma sessions that we are conducting from the Dhamma Center is having such a profound impact in the lives of many people going through this difficult time. But not only for this difficult time, let it grow into a life practice, a sort of a way of life for you, that you are able to continue and have this practice with you. Now, do you have any questions? No questions at all? Okay. Please, can you explain briefly how you do Devanusati? Thank you for a great Sutta choice in class. All right. Now, Devanusati. All right. Devanusati, the recollection of the qualities of the deities, right? Right. Now, the planes of existence, that is, the planes of existence, right, points towards the existence of different levels and different sort of a hierarchy of different types of deities, ranging from those who are living amongst us, right, up to those who are the Brahmas, right? Now, within the Devas, the Brahmas, within all of the plethora of different divine beings exists, right? Exists the need. Now we know that the Devas' intellect is very keen, right? We call it Tikkapanya. The name of the Sutta Dil is Sambādhokasa. It is on the website, my dear. All right. So, okay. So these deities, we know that deities have keen intellect. In Pali, we call it Tikkapanya. Tikkapanya, right? This keen intellect, right? These keen intellect allows for the deities to connect with the Dhamma to a greater extent compared to the normal mundane human beings, right? In the recollection of deities, what we do is we take a class of deities. Actually, we go through many classes of deities. Now, as if you do look at the Sutra Mihiri, if you do look at the Sutta, right, if you do look at the Sutta, it starts from the Chatummaharajika deities and extends all the way up to the Paranimmita Vasavattiya, right? Now, that is the Chatummaharajika deities are the kingdom of the four great kings, and then goes into the Paranimmita Vasavattiya, and then into the Brahma's hosts. What the Anusati is remember the faith, moral virtue, learning, clarity, and wisdom, the 5 that I spoke of, right? You contemplate on the existence of Shraddha, Sila, Sutta, Chaga, Panya with regards to the deities, right? With regards to the deities. It is a way of sort of pushing yourself up, right? Now, usually when we work with work with the Dhamma, when we are given this sort of confidence, when we associate ourselves with a higher being, higher connection, higher level of power, we find that we have a great amount of motivation to do what we do, right? A great amount of motivation to do what we do. So you develop Saddha, Sila, Sutta, Chaga, Panya, and then with your Saddha, Sila, Sutta, Chaga. Can you hear me? Hello. Is the connection stable now?